It's a real pleasure for me to be part of your annual conference for the second year in a row. As many of you will remember, last October in Orlando, we had a great session together where we talked about the importance of storytelling. And here we all are, 1 year later. How many of you, show of hands, were in Orlando? Okay, so most. So we were all there, most of us, 1 year ago. We had a great time together, and since then, you haven't called, you haven't written. I feel so used. Actually, I have been in steady touch with the Alliance for Children and Families over the last 12 months. Because once you all began your Telling Your Stories campaign, there it is, I was determined to keep a close eye on what you were doing. And somewhere along the line we said, wouldn't it be fun to cap off a full year of storytelling with a contest, something along the lines of American Idol? And so, Telling Our Stories Idol was born. Now, in a few minutes, you're going to hear from 3 finalists who were selected from dozens of entries around the country. And just like on American Idol, you're going to have the chance to vote by phone and pick the winners yourselves. But before we hear their stories, I thought it might be a good idea to spend just a few minutes reviewing what we talked about last year in Orlando. For those who were there, this will be a quick refresher course. For those who weren't, consider this a short course on storytelling. But either way, there are 2 things in particular that I want to review with you, because I think when it comes your turn to evaluate the stories, it will be helpful to have these criteria in mind. Make sense? Okay. So here we go. Let's start by reviewing the structure of a good story. And I really enjoyed seeing that sample we just saw about Christina Hubbard and how Ways to Work helped her, because that was a well-told story. It had all the elements. As you can see by the schematic on either side of me, all good stories start by introducing us to a character that we're going to follow through the story, what we call the protagonist. Stories are always about people. If somebody comes up to you to tell you a story, the first question in your mind, whether you know it or not, is, who is this story about? Who am I going to follow? If you tell a story about your organization cannot be a protagonist. People don't identify with organizations, they identify with people. So in the case of Ways to Work, we just had a story about Christina Hubbard. And we meet her, we learn a little bit about her. Where does she live? What does she do? What's her story like? And then she goes on this journey, like you see here. She wants to get to work every day. She wants to, earn money and run her family. But she's got all these kinds of barriers. Doesn't have a car, has a low credit rating, has to take mass transit, all these different problems. Barrier, barrier, barrier. But thankfully, she encounters Ways to Work, and now she has help in getting a car, and it's transformational to her life and what she can do. So a story is about a person who wants something, goes on a journey, runs into all kinds of barriers, that's what makes it interesting, gets around those barriers, and ends up at what we call the resolution. What you're looking at there is the 3-act structure of storytelling. Act 1, who's it about and what do they want? Act 2, the middle, the pursuit of the thing. Act 3, the end, what happened and what it means. We did this last year. Look familiar? Okay. So that's the basic structure. And by the way, this is not my construct. I didn't create this. This is not my thing. It's not a white thing. It's not a Western thing. This belongs to no race, creed, religion, or nationality. This is the human experience of storytelling. We've seen it around the globe. So that's structure. The second thing I want you to keep in mind is that there is a distinction, an important distinction, between journalism, journalistic storytelling, and narrative storytelling, what we're talking about today. And this is what it looks like, really simply. On the left, that upside-down triangle, that's journalistic storytelling. Has anybody here been trained as a journalist? Show of hands. Anybody? Right here. Did they teach you the upside-down pyramid? No? Something else, okay. Well, the basic idea of the upside-down pyramid is when people read a story in a newspaper, hear it on radio, watch it on TV, they want the facts quick, fast. What happened? Tell me. So in the upside-down pyramid, the idea is in the first couple of paragraphs, who, what, when, where. Answer the questions so that people know what happened, why it matters, etc. And then if you have room, you can add the additional facts, the less important facts, further and further down the triangle. If your intent is to inform quickly and concisely, it's perfect. But that's not what we're talking about today. That's not what Storytelling Idol is about. We're talking about the complete opposite, and that's on the right. That's narrative storytelling. That's when you tell a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You start with just a few facts, and you gradually add and widen and deepen until the person has taken the full journey, has to stay to the end to find out what happened, and because they make that investment of time, they have an emotional response. And now they're ready to do, to give, to change. This is a very important distinction. On the left, journalism, if you just want people to know, that's fine. But if you want people to do, then you're in the world of narrative storytelling. You've got to take them on a journey. You've got to get them involved. You've got to make them feel something. Okay. So we're clear on the basic structure of a good story, and on the fact that we are looking for stories that will take us on a journey, engage our emotions, and ultimately make us want to do something. So we're ready to get down to business and start our competition. Let's begin that process by meeting our three judges. First, she's the Business Development and Marketing Coordinator for Ways to Work, an organization that is not only a sponsor of Telling Our Stories Idol, but one which has told countless stories, and you just saw one, about helping families gain success through their Ways to Work car loan program. Please join me now in welcoming to the stage Tani Boston. There you go. All right. Second, he's the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Philanthropy at the Alliance for Children and Families. Please welcome Doug Diefenbach. Doug showing good energy on the way to the stage. And you've already met our third judge. He's a partner at Kemp Goldberg Partners and another sponsor of this competition. Please welcome back to the stage, David Goldberg. All right, welcome judges. I will be Ryan Seacrest in this scenario. And let me quickly go over the rules. Each finalist will come to this podium to tell her story. We gave them a limit of 1,000 words, which is about 5 minutes per story. After each of our finalists shares her story, we'll turn to you judges for your comments. And just like on American Idol, your comments are intended only to promote your own careers and inflame fake rivalries. And they will have no effect on the final voting. Actually, all kidding aside, we do want to hear from the judges because this is not just a contest. We're still interested in making these stories the very best that they can be. So the judges will offer their advice first, and then, when all three storytellers are done, we'll turn it over to you for the official voting. And I'll explain that later. Okay, everybody understand what we're doing? All right, so let's begin. The order of the stories was determined by a random drawing, and I will give you instructions on exactly how to vote when they're all done. So right now, just sit back, relax, and focus on the stories. And our first story comes from East End House. It's called Seeds of the City, and please welcome our first storyteller, Katie Todd.
So what do you get when a high school student devotes his summer to an internship about food in the city? That's what I'm trying to find out as I sit down with Marcus. The lanky teen is fidgeting nervously as we talk, and I'm jotting down notes when something he says really jumps out at me. He goes, I don't know. I guess sometimes I like to do kind things. Kind things, huh? Well, a lot of us like to do kind things, but I'd never heard it put quite like that, and especially not from a 14-year-old. I ask Marcus what he means, and he tells me this story. So Marcus walks up to an intersection where an older man is leaning up against a mailbox, and the walk signal's taking a while, so Marcus turns to the man and he stammers, "Pretty hot, huh?" "Better than sleeping in the snow," says the man. The white lights flash on and Marcus crosses the street, but the man's words stick with him, and 5 minutes later Marcus is back on the street corner handing the man a sandwich. Marcus feels pretty good as he skips up his front steps, but his heart sinks when he sees the bag of fresh groceries on the kitchen counter. They're from the East End House food pantry. Here he just fed a homeless man he didn't know, but his own family still needs help putting food on the table every single day. I gotta make some money, Marcus realizes. So a few weeks later, Marcus, who has been coming to East End House Community Center since preschool, applies for the organization's Food and the Urban Environment Leadership Summer Internship. And then about a month later, he's taking his kind things to scale. For a month, Marcus and his fellow interns have been tending the East End House garden beds. They're learning how to mulch and divide and transplant and weed and compost and harvest. And today, the group is at an urban farm where every inch of the city plot is covered with an array of tall and stringy, short and bushy, and curly plants, and all of them are edible. Marcus and his friends are prepping the soil for vegetables that will eventually be distributed to homeless women. "Use your weight," laughs the group's leader, Abby. "But there's no friction," Marcus calls back as he strains his sweaty hands on the shovel. "No, your foot." Abby flashes a wry smile as she steps onto the little lip of the shovel where the metal meets the wooden handle. She might be 6 inches shorter than Marcus, but the point of her shovel slides sharply into the ground. Marcus tries it, and a grin lights across his face as he starts moving dirt with newfound force. Next to him, one of his interns is rubbing his hands. He shakes his head at Marcus and says, "I'm gonna have blisters." But Marcus doesn't flinch, and he replies, "It's worth it. I mean, this is a farm with a moral. They don't just make money, they grow healthy, local food, and they give it to people who need it." The other intern sticks with rubbing his hands, but Marcus can't stop thinking, can I do that? Can I use food to help people? By the time I sit down with Marcus, he's a great gardener and he knows all the ins and outs of working in the East End House food pantry. He's visited an urban farm, the Greater Boston Food Bank, a sustainable agriculture company, a farmer's market, and more. He's even gotten himself a second job at a restaurant he visited with his fellow interns after his palpable desire to help and his love of food made such a positive impression on the restaurant staff. But what strikes me the most from our conversation is the way Marcus describes how the internship has helped him discern a plan for action. Armed with new skills and knowledge, now Marcus has more than an affinity for doing kind things. He has a strategy to make a difference. Here's what he tells me. "From all the work we've done in the pantry, I know lots of people need basic things. There's a lot of need, but it's not just a need for food. A lot of people actually have enough food, they just don't have good food, like vegetables. I want to make an urban farm that gives food to people who need it. I know I can't do the whole system right away, but I have to start somewhere. I've been thinking and researching a lot and learning about monoculture and crop diversity to figure out how to avoid superpests. I'm working on my plan for a future urban garden, and I'm starting right now with seeds and organic container gardens at home." From a youth with a giving heart to an intern developing skills to a young man with tactical plans to fulfill a dream, Marcus leaves me with one last thought. He says confidently, maybe it will only make one basket of food this year, but if I can't feed the whole city yet, you can bet I'm at least going to feed my neighbors."
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Now, unlike American Idol, we're going to hear from only one judge for each of our finalists. We have a little bit of time pressure here. So, Tani Boston, let's start with you. What did you think about Katie's story?
Katie, awesome job, first of all. I think that you were great in your oration. It takes a lot to take a story from the written version to actually getting in front of people and reciting it, so great job with that. In terms of the story you told, I thought it was great. I love the way you started with little details to make me want to engage more and listen more to find out where is she going with this. And then when I actually found out the character of the story was Marcus, and he was a 14-year-old, and how his whole story was sparked by seeing that homeless person, you know, on the street corner, kind of like sparked the story from the start. So I could appreciate the way that the story developed throughout. And then I also could appreciate your wrap-up at the end, where you kind of reminded us where Marcus started as the youthful intern, then how he developed into that working young man who was thinking about ways that he could help his community and take what he learned to feed people. So great job.
Very good. Let's hear again for Katie Taj. Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Thanks, Tani. All right. Thank you, Tani. All right. Our second story comes from Beachbrook. The title is Shackles, Tea Parties, and the Victory Road. Please welcome our next storyteller, Nancy Kortemeyer.
It's a sweltering afternoon in the hills of southern Ohio. Inside the squalid trailer they call home, 3 children wander among liquor bottles, dirty dishes, and trash. They're hot, they're tired, but most of all, they're starving. They haven't eaten all day, maybe longer, and the situation is spiraling out of control. That's when Kenneth decides to take charge. It's not the first time he's had to care for his little sister, who's just 3, or his brother, who's still a baby. He doesn't know why his mom leaves them alone all the time, or why his dad doesn't come home. And how could he know? Kenneth is only 5. All he knows is that again today, there's no one to care for them. And he wants to cry, as he often does. Mama, Mama, why did you leave us? But right now, they're hungry and something must be done. Kenneth thinks maybe he can make scrambled eggs, so he drags a stool up to the stove. He's just getting started when there's suddenly a knock on the door. It's a police officer and a stranger who says she's taking them to a safe place. Barefoot and frightened, the children are taken from the only home they've ever known. Kenneth doesn't know where they're going or whether their mom will ever come for them. He doesn't know that he will never live with his brother and sister again. He doesn't know yet that there will be no happy childhood for him, or that the road to recovery will be a long and painful journey. It will be years before he understands that his mom supports her drug habit by prostitution. It will be years before he knows that his dad shot himself and he won't ever be coming back. And it will be 7 heartbreaking years before Kenneth, age 12 and out of options, arrives at Beachbrook. Therapist Jean Homerkhausen, fondly known to her clients as Miss H, has worked with many tough cases over her 40 years in social work, but even so, this one's a challenge. As she studies the file, each page detailing the tragic saga of a shattered childhood, she wonders grimly, what does the future hold for this lost child? Separated early on from his siblings, bounced from one foster home to another, reunited with his mom for a brief but disastrous stay. An adoption brings hope that Kenneth may finally have a new family, but his explosive behavior continues to escalate. Miss H reads on. Even with a new family, Kenneth is so out of control that he lands in a detention center where he is pepper sprayed and restrained with shackles, and he's just 8 years old. He returns home, but once again, tragedy strikes. His new dad dies, and his adoptive mom, blaming Kenneth, gives him up, thrown away again. Each new loss leaves a terrible scar, every wound deeper than before. Miss H closes the file and heads to the intensive treatment unit. As she steps inside, a small, fair-haired boy offers his hand. "I'm looking forward to working with you," he says politely. It's not what she expects, and it's not what she'll see in the grueling years ahead. Often in the early days, the staff is wary when she comes to meet him, worried about her safety. But Kenneth finds in Miss H the first person he has ever trusted, and she sees in him the highly intelligent and insightful boy buried deep inside his wounded soul. She learns that this once shackled boy loves to have tea parties with hot chocolate and brownies as they talk, small, nurturing moments he had never known. The outbursts still come and go as he begins to confront his rage and loss, but eventually, with Miss H as his lifeline, Kenneth is able to move into a foster home. Still, amid the growing light, times of darkness. One day, Miss H finds Kenneth on the porch of his foster home, banging his head on the wall, crying desperately, out of hope. She holds him until he's calm, repeating over and over, "You can be healed. You are not totally broken. You are gifted and smart, and there is nothing you can do to make me stop loving you." He begins to focus on his schoolwork and participate in sports. He discovers that he can help other children, sitting quietly with them when they are drowning in their own despair. One day he shares a poem with Miss H. "Beechbrook is my turnaround place. It showed me the real and true me. It showed me that I am somebody and that I can change. It showed me that I can make it. It showed me the strength not to give up. It showed me the long journey to success. It showed me the victory road." 3 years later, the boy without a future is 18. He's forgiven and reconnected with his mother, who finally transformed her own life. And they're starting over. It's a spring afternoon at Beechbrook. In between therapy sessions, Miss H opens her email to find a message. "I graduate Sunday. Finally, it's soon to begin, my life. I cannot and will not forget my roots. I have come very far. I will never give up, no matter what. I cannot forget you. That's impossible. You, by God's will, shined a light in the void I was in. You illuminated my fears of others and helped me face those dragons. I appreciate all you have done for me. You've earned a permanent place in my heart." Miss H knows that Kenneth will always carry the scars of his past and that his journey to healing will continue. But he's traveling on the victory road now, and she knows that Beechbrook saved his life.
Good job. All right, thank you, Nancy. Doug Diefenbach, what are your thoughts about Nancy's story?
Well, Nancy, I'm going to tell you from the beginning the thing that I didn't like about your story, and that was that it couldn't go on and on making me feel all the things that I was feeling during that story. That was really tremendous. I really liked the beginning, the reveal. You know, we come up on the scene, we see we're right there with them. It's very immediate. The squalor, you know, I've got the picture in my mind, which makes it very effective for me. So that's great. And you introduce us to our protagonist in the story, who is revealed then that he's got all of these gallant sort of motivations, and yet he's only 5. So how can your heart not, you know, go right out to him? So great job of reeling me in on that one too. We see the inciting incident of him, the police coming. So of course that's, you just know, we know, but he doesn't know at that point that after that his life will never be the same. So there's a little bit of foreshadowing there that you used, which is great. And he doesn't know what's going to happen, but we sort of do. And that's kind of a nice technique in your story. Very cool. One thing that I didn't know was he starts out with this gallant, you know, he wants to take care of his siblings and all that. So I'm rooting for him. And somewhere along the line in his story, he turns into a different person that with a lot of sort of dark motivation. I think you used the word dark. And part of me wants to kind of hear how that happened, to see what his transformation was. So that's what I'd want to have more of in your story. Then you go on and you introduce us when you discover there's a second protagonist in your story, which is great, which is the caregiver. And now we've got two people to root for. So now I'm feeling the story both from his point of view and from her point of view. And I think that's very effective, especially if you're using the story as a way of bringing in constituents, because now I can give my money as a donation either because I want to support him or because I want to support her. And I can feel it sort of both ways. So good effective job of that. And I like to see that both of them had discoveries about themselves and about each other. And I like that they both made declarations to each other about what they felt and the role that each of them had in their lives. So you're really telling two stories at once, which I thought was very artful and very well done. So great job.
Good. Thank you, Doug. Let's hear it again for Nancy Kortemeyer. All right, 2 down, 1 to go. Our third and final story comes from Child and Family Resources, Inc. The title is Choices, and please join me in welcoming to the stage Joy Levine.
Being a teen parent is hard, and from our experience, there is a turning point where things can get better or go south. Let me take you to a turning point of a girl named Allie in her apartment on a Tuesday afternoon. I don't know why you need a GED, Allie. I make enough money to take care of us. Don't you trust me? Miguel gazed into Alejandra's eyes, working his usual charm. She felt herself falling for it, as usual. She always did. This isn't about you, Alejandra said, turning from his gaze. This is about me. And Corey, it's about us. Miguel sneered and leapt off the couch. Alejandra pursued him, lowering her voice so as not to wake 1-year-old Corey, trying unsuccessfully to sleep in her bedroom. This is about me finishing school and being able to do something for me and my son. I need to do this. If I can just get the GED, then I can get a better job. Maybe go to Phoenix College to study nursing. Miguel spun suddenly, his nose inches from hers. Allie, don't choose that school over me. I need you, and that stupid school is taking you away from me. But Miguel let his teenage temper flare. Stay home today, Allie. Stay home every day. Stay with me if you know what's good for you. Yesterday in her classroom at the Maricopa Center for Adolescent Parents, Alejandra had been flushed with success, victory even. It began when she appeared at my office door several weeks ago and quietly announced, "Mrs. Bunny says I'm ready to take my social studies test." "Great," I said, glancing at the calendar. "Wow, that was fast, Alejandra. You've only been here 3 weeks." I know, Alejandra said, twisting her fingers in front of her. It was a nervous habit she had when talking to anyone in authority, especially teachers. Now MCAP offered her a path to a life neither her mother or grandmother had ever known. 2 days later, she was back in my office with her scores. "I've never passed anything before," she whispered, still trying to grasp her success. "How does it feel?" I asked. "It's pretty cool," she said and smiled. All of the GED students celebrated Alejandra's success that day during their weekly community lunch. The applause made Alejandra blush. All of her fellow students were used to bad news when it came to tests at school. They, like Alejandra, had dropped out after becoming pregnant teenagers. Alejandra found she enjoyed her school days at the center. From studying for GED exams to learning life skills and attending parenting classes, while her son was down the hall in the Early Learning Center, she'd come to look forward to each day's activities. She felt proud of her accomplishments, a foreign feeling, and one she would like to feel again. Over the following 5 weeks, the students celebrated with Alejandra again for passing her science and reading GED tests. Only 2 tests left. That's when Miguel started getting jealous. Back in their apartment, Allie was glad for the phone call interrupting Miguel's rant. Hi, Alejandra, it's Joy. You weren't at school today. We miss you. What's going on? I've just been dealing with some family issues, Alejandra said. Is everything okay? I asked. I can hear Corey crying. Miguel smirked and walked outside to smoke, clearly thinking he'd made his point. Alejandra lowered her voice and spoke quickly into the phone. My boyfriend and I are fighting, she told me. He thinks I'm spending too much time away from him, and he won't give me a ride anymore. I'm not sure what to do. Well, we have bus passes so you and Corey can get to school every day, but you have to decide how important this is to you. I need you here first thing tomorrow morning to hold your spot in the program. Oh, okay, Alejandra said. I'll call you back. Anytime, I said. When her boyfriend returned, Alejandra faced him. Miguel, I need to go to school. Joy will give me a bus pass, but only if I show up tomorrow. I have 2 tests to go. I'm almost there. You don't need a GED, Allie. I do know what's good for me, Alejandra said. That's why I'm going. Miguel's eyes narrowed. I will make your life miserable, Allie. Without me, you won't have a ride. You won't have anyone to pay rent. Your son won't have a dad to stand in for that bastard who got you pregnant. You will have nothing. Alejandra bit her lip, her eyes down. She summoned the courage of the other girls in her class, all struggling with the same thing she was. They wouldn't take this. She took a deep breath and met Miguel's gaze. You can say and do whatever you want. I am going to school tomorrow, and I am going to finish my GED. You can't stop me, and if you won't support me, get out. I'm going to be a nurse whether you want me to or not. That's when she noticed that Corey had stopped crying.
Well read, well read. All right, and we turn to David Goldberg for his comments. David.
Thank you, Joy. That was a terrific dramatic reading. A couple things that I really liked. You gave us a little preface up front, just a couple words to help set the context. Just without giving us a spoiler, it was sort of, we kind of knew what the story might be about, or at least the context of it. The narrative was developed very artfully, especially in that room at the beginning. I felt like perhaps I was actually in the room listening, but not wanting to be recognized as in the room, because it was a little scary, actually. And that brings me to my next point. In addition to a protagonist, you had an antagonist, which helped define the protagonist, actually, by being what he was not. The goal was very clear, what she wanted to do. And overall, just a very nice job. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Joy, thank you once again. All right, we've heard from our 3 finalists. We've heard from our judges. Judges, you are officially done, but just a question. I know you weren't expecting this, but you now have heard all 3 stories. Any general comments, anybody you want to share about the stories, anything you heard overall that you want to feed back? Anything? David?
I thought they were all awful. Sorry, that's my worst Simon Cowell.
That's right.
No, actually, it's clear that all 3, and I'm sure many others who submitted stories, took this very seriously. That's very clear to me. And all of them did as just a member of the audience, not just a judge, all of them had me wrapped.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to see what happened next. So good storytelling.
Me too. Doug or Tani, anything you want to add? Doug?
Well, I'm new to the Alliance, and I'm actually even new to the human serving sector. So while I've had some experience of that in the distant past, I love having the opportunity to hear firsthand in this way about the work that our members do, because it charges me up and gives me a great sense of mission. So I appreciate the opportunity to hear those stories.
Very good. Tani, last word from you?
The same with these guys. I feel like all 3 did an excellent job of kind of reeling you in and just getting you closer to the people they serve. And as a funder, that's exactly what you need to hear and read when you're thinking about who you're going to give your money to.
Very good.
So, excellent.
Judges, you are done. You may leave the stage. Let's hear it for our 3 judges. All right. Now it is your turn. Please take out your mobile phones. If you turn them off, turn them on. And I'm going to give you your instructions for voting. All right. If you want to vote for Katie Todd's story, Seeds of the City, you will text to the number 22333. You're going to text to that number the message or the code 310242. Okay? Now, 22333 is going to be the destination no matter who you're voting for. So that's what goes on the top of your phone. If you want to vote for Katie, 310242. If you want to vote for Shackles, Tea Parties, and the Victory Road, Nancy Quartermeyer's story, you will have the message 310244. And if you want to vote for Joy Levine's story, Choices, you'll have the message 310247. And if anybody's still confused, it looks like this, if you have an iPhone. 22333 up top, your code on the bottom. And if you're still confused, we'll send a 15-year-old girl to your table and she'll explain it to you. Okay, now I'm going to go back. That's right. All right, so here are the codes. I'm going to leave that up there for a moment here, let you vote. We actually, just so you know, there's a wonderful service called Poll Everywhere, where you can do a poll like this with a large audience. It's not very expensive, and right now your votes are being tabulated on a computer in the back there, and in a couple of minutes we're going to know exactly how you voted, and we're going to award prizes. Anybody having problems voting? You can only vote once. Does anybody not have a phone? Thank you, 2013. On the back, how's that computer working? We doing good? Okay. All right, we're actually now going to show a short video. Hold on. While you're voting, we have a special video to show you. Before today's contest, we interviewed the finalists to see what they learned about the art of storytelling during this whole process. Do we have the video ready? Here's what they had to tell us.
When I sat down to write a story of a typical teen parent running through my program, I thought of a young woman who had really, really struggled with her academic success, but the intelligence was there. And so I wanted to capture her motivation and the struggles that she went through to find and own that motivation to be successful. And so I've really tried to carry her spirit of success through the story and hopefully do justice to what she's accomplished.
I wanted to tell a story about the special healing power of this relationship between this severely traumatized child and his therapist, who became his lifeline and ultimately his lifesaver. I don't always get a chance to get to know the children who come to Beechbrook, but I did get to know this young man. And in a way, because in spite of all his deprivation, he was able to express his feelings and he had a lot of insight. And so for me, he kind of became the voice of many of the children in our programs who can't really talk about what's happened to them. And I wanted to show the journey from, the time of his childhood, to show the kind of work it takes to help a child come back from that kind of trauma and have a chance for a normal life.
Well, when I first started thinking about this story, I was a little torn between the tension between the pressure of having a really competitive story and then not wanting to be exploitative of the actual true story that the constituents experienced. But then the moment I sat down with the main character in my story, it just blew me away. And the real pressure became then, how do I do justice to this inspirational and really phenomenal young man?
It was really exciting to get the email saying, "Oh, you're a finalist," and Handy helped focus my thoughts on really the point and the purpose of the story, what kernel of truth I wanted somebody to walk away from the story with. And so I really appreciated his questions that drove me back to the purpose.
Well, I do have a journalism background, and so for me it was a real shift in my thinking from that reporting mentality. Even when I thought I was writing a compelling feature story, I realized I wasn't telling it in the same way. So
working with him really did enable me to shift the way I thought about how the characters spoke in the story and what details I would include. And it really was, it was kind of tough to do at first, but I think it was really a great experience.
I think storytelling is really about emotional resonance and where is the emotional truth. We all have different stories, but the emotions that we feel and experience in our lives is where those connections are made. And so when we can find the common emotion in our stories, they have a power unto themselves. And so focusing on that, I think, has been really helpful for me in my writing.
Well, I think the biggest thing is to let the constituent voice shine through, is to not come to talking with people with a set story in mind, and really let it be about letting them shine through. That it's not about something that we force, it's not about having to be a brilliant writer, but instead it's just sharing the stories that happen every day inside our agencies and really letting that lead the way.
I think just really instead of thinking, you know, in agencies like ours that work with children and families all the time and a lot of different programs, to not think so much about the program and how the program helps, but think about, you know, from, you know, as a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, what is the person in the story going through, and how, you know, think about that and tell the story from that human point of view. It doesn't matter so much to our audiences, I think, how we do our work, but the outcome of our work, and that's about helping children and families.
Okay, I'm very excited. I've got 3 huge checks up here. And when I say huge, I mean that in terms of size, not the amount. All right. The votes have been cast. Thank you, everybody, for voting. The system worked. The technology did not fail. We have our winners. The prize for 3rd place, which is, as I said, a gigantic check for $250, goes to Katie Todd of East End House. Katie, come on up, please. Katie. No extra charge for the humiliation. The prize for 2nd place, a check equally large for $500, goes to Joy Levine. Joy. And that, by the way, those checks are not redeemable in any bank. And of course, that means our grand prize winner, who will win $1,000 plus a scholarship to any class she likes at the Goodman Center, Nancy Kortemeyer. You got your picture right there for your pictures. Got the pictures? Okay, good. Thank you. Nancy, as our grand prize winner, would you like to say a few words? Come. Here, I'll hold up for you.
No, this is not over yet.
It's not over yet.
I think that everyone in this room knows Kenneth. We all have children like Kenneth in our programs every day, most of us who work in this kind of field. And so, you know, to us it's not a new story, but it doesn't make it any less painful. And I hope that it will help other people outside of our organizations understand the long journey from that early trauma and abuse to any kind of normalcy. And the road to recovery is so long and so painful. And I hope it will also help people understand that the work we do on the prevention side, strengthening families, helping kids grow up in safe, stable homes, is so important, because Kenneth is the result of what happens when that doesn't work well for us. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Let's hear it once again for all three storytellers. Thank you very much. Thank you. So again, I want to thank Nancy, Joy, and Katie. I want to thank our three judges. I want to thank to all of you for your votes. This was a first time for us, and it worked beautifully. I want to thank everyone at the Alliance for Children and Families for all the work they did to pull this together for you, and a big shout out to Crystal Morgan, who did so much work. Crystal, thank you very much. And if I may, one last thought before I go. I sincerely appreciate the commitment you have all made to storytelling, and I encourage you to stick with it. As you've just heard, you have wonderful stories to tell, so please keep telling your stories. Thank you very much.